Welcome to my painting Oscar the dog. As you can see, I've transferred my drawing to my gray velour paper and gone over the lines with my 9B graphite pencil to make sure I can see everything clearly. And now I'm using my 6B charcoal pencil to darken some of the lines, especially the ones that I want to show through subsequent layers of pastel that we put on, so we don't lose our way while we're painting. The charcoal acts as a map to show us where everything belongs. So I'm darkening around the eyes and the pupils of the eyes. You'll get a line drawing plus a color list and everything you need to complete this painting in a PDF at the beginning. So I'm just going around these lines on the eye. I use my pencil, I hold it at an angle to my paper rather than just using it straight up and down as a point. This is the white charcoal pencil. Now I'm using the white charcoal pencil to mark things that I want to remain white. And it shows up even through lots of layers of pastel. So I'm putting a highlight on the lower rim of the dog's eye and also a highlight in the pupil. Be careful when you're using the white pastel because it's going to show through all the layers of pastel just like the black will. Now I'm kind of gently shading around the eye, around the eyelid. I'm using a very, very light touch. Now I'm going underneath the highlight we just applied under the eye with my black charcoal and gently shading out his eyelid that's underneath. Light touch. If we get too much charcoal on there, we can't take it off. It's very dark. Now I'm going around the other eye. Carefully drawing the shape. The shape of the eyes is very, very important. Putting in the pupil and the upper lid. Now I'm using my white charcoal pencil to mark a little highlight above the lid in the corner of the eye and on the pupil. Now putting the white highlights in the corner of the eye and along the lid help the eye to look moist. So now I'm going underneath this eye and gently shading the under eyelid. Being careful not to add a lot of charcoal. And now I'm going to brighten that white spot up just a little bit. Seems to need to be a little bit, oops, pencil rolls off the table sometimes. So now let's outline the nose. I want to be careful when doing this that I draw all my shapes and get them just the way they should be. When you have a good drawing when you're painting, no matter what medium you're using, it will help to guarantee your success in the final product. If you have a bad drawing, you're off to a bad start. So make sure you get your drawing right. I'm very, very careful during this stage to make sure that I place everything where it needs to be. So I'm darkening the nostrils. Being careful to get the shape of the nose. Now here I'm putting in some shading on the bottom half of the nose. I'm adding the white charcoal pencil, putting in the highlight on the bottom rim of the nostril. Now when I'm shading, I'm also putting some white charcoal pencil around the top edge of that nostril because that's where the light hits, and a little across the top of the nose. Now when I'm using the charcoal pencil to shade, I'm using it very lightly. I can't stress that enough. I don't want a lot of charcoal. The bottom part of the nose is going to be darker than the top since the light strikes on the top edge. So I'll put a little more charcoal at the bottom. And that helps to give the nose its shape. It's also darker right where it meets the dog's face because it projects outward and it causes that to be darker. So now I'm darkening his mouth. Just above his mouth. There's some little black hairs above his mouth. This is actually his mouth, so I'm putting that in. And now I'm putting in little dark hairs that are underneath his mouth. I really take my time during the drawing phase. It's very important. Now I'm going to put in a couple of darker hairs that show the shape of his muzzle so I don't lose that when I start adding color. I'm just doing this very lightly with the side of my charcoal pencil. I'm going to use my white pencil to add a few hairs on the top edge of the lip and just underneath. and a few white hairs around the corner of his mouth. So I can also find that when I add more pastel on top. Add a few hairs above his eye. We don't have to make a totally detailed charcoal drawing. That is not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to add details that I think are important, that I want to find still showing up after I add pastel. Now that's going to be different for each thing that you paint, each animal or each project that you do. You'll find different areas you want to emphasize. I for sure don't want to lose Oscar's ears. He's got these great fluffy ears, and I don't want to lose them, the edges of them, so I'm going to darken them a bit. Actually, where I'm working now is his actual ear. The rest is all this gorgeous hair that he has. I'm going to add some of the white hairs, lighter hairs. They will show through, as I've said, when I add the pastel, so we can see the edges of Oscar's ears. A few hairs around his eyes. Now you may not be able to see them very well, but I don't want them super dark. Do not press very hard with your white charcoal pencil. You cannot remove these lines. So don't press super hard. Putting in the details around Oscar's ear. And the side of his face. Now it's time to add the details of Oscar's bandana. He's wearing a checkered kind of houndstooth, white and black bandana. So I'm going to use my charcoal pencil to put in the darks on his bandana, the little checks, so that we can see them later. I'm basically drawing in the bandana and then adding, just using my pencil to add the checks. We're going to add more detail later, so it's not necessary to add a lot of detail right now. I'm going to shade under the folds that are in his bandana. And it kind of goes in and out of his fur, so we're going to be pulling fur over some areas of it. So just lightly sketch that in and place your black checks with your charcoal pencil. Now, as his scarf goes underneath around his neck and underneath his fur, I'm drawing in some of the dark places there. The bandana gets kind of lost underneath, but I draw in what I can see from my reference photo. Now I'm going back with my charcoal pencil to add a few more hairs on the side of Oscar's face and a few more white hairs with the white charcoal pencil. Now that we're done with the drawing, we're ready to add some color. I'm using the flat sanded side of a 704.7 light gray I use it up on its end to add color around the eyes and other small places. I'm putting in the first layer, which is a light base coat. It's okay that you get out of the lines, especially on the side of his face, because we don't have a background yet, so that's not important. It is important to use a soft touch, very light pressure, cross-hatch, back and forth, to add the gray evenly on the dog's face and neck. I'm going over the bandana as well and out a bit into the background. I just want to get some of those base colors on first. So now that we have the first layer of gray on, we're going to add some brown, and we're going to use a very red brown, which is 411.5 burnt sienna Rembrandt color, and it looks pretty strong. And you can see that our charcoal shows through, and our white charcoal pencil. I'm going very lightly up on one end to go around the eyes. Now be sure and watch the introductory videos that show you how to sand your pastels and different techniques that you're going to need to work these paintings. This time I'm going around Oscar's nose. I'm not going to add color on top of it. I'm also not putting the red color on the side of his face where the white hair is. He has kind of a white muzzle, so I'm going to not put any strong color there. I'm also going to avoid his bandana and not put color on his bandana. And don't worry if at this stage your colors look blotchy, that your layers are not completely filled in. The pastel will eventually become smooth because we're going to add lots of layers. This paper holds lots of layer of pastel. I'm going to speed this up a little bit for you now as I add the remainder of the 411.5 down around the neck, just a little bit out of camera shot, but there is fur down underneath his collar, and I want to add that. Now I'm going to add a third layer to Oscar's fur, and for this we're going to use 231.5, which is gold ochre in the Rembrandt line. This is a lighter gold color, and it's going to help to even out the layers that we've put on so far. It's going to tone down the red, and it's going to take it, add a little more yellow tone to it. So I'm adding a light layer of that to help blend things in. This time I am going around his entire muzzle. So this is very light cross-hatching, and you can see we're beginning to build up several layers now, and it's getting smoother, which is beautiful. I'm getting those hairs underneath his collar. I'm going to add a bit of background now before we go further. This is 508.5 Prussian blue. It is a very dark blue. When we get finished, it's going to make a beautiful dark blue background. But the first layer is going to be this dark blue. So I'm adding it about 1.5 inches out around the dog. I don't like to add background all the way to the edges at this point because more than likely we'll just get our hands in it as we continue to work on our painting. So I need some background to draw the hairs, final hairs of the dog into, but I don't want a lot of it. So I'm just going about 1.5 inches out. You may find you have to sand this particular color very often. It is a hard color. It's very hard. It builds up skin on the bottom side that you're using, and when the color ceases to come off, then you need to sand it and wipe it off carefully with your cloth, and then start applying color again. So I'm checking each time I pick it up and look at it to see if it's formed a skin yet. Just keep working with it. Go back and forth, cross hatch it to get what you're looking for, a nice color. I need to sand a little bit, so I sand it and come back and add some more. I'm going to use it up on its end around Oscar's ears. I'm going to speed things up a little bit now while I'm adding the background. We're going to add more colors to the background. I'm using it up on the end to go around his ears. And I'm getting as close into the hair as I can at this point. We're going to do some other things to help get closer, and there won't be any white places left when we're done. But for now, we're just going to get in that basic layer so that we can move on to other things in painting this beautiful portrait of Oscar. Don't worry about some of those spots that are a little darker than others. That will all take care of itself as we add more layers. Now I want to show you what I use to fix small mistakes. This is called a camera blower. I'm going to use it to blow off those heavier areas of pastel. It works really well for that. So I just puffed it away. Now I'm going to go back to adding a little blue, a little more blue to that area. Now I'm going to switch colors. This is 727.3 blue gray in Rembrandt. Now this is softer than the dark blue. It begins to push the blue into the paper. It helps to smooth out the blue that's underneath and still maintain that lovely blue color. So I'm cross-hatching it over the dark blue. Now I've speeded things up just a little bit while I'm adding that gray color over the dark blue. Cross-hatching, light pressure. And go up on the end when I need to. In between the hairs as much as possible at this stage. So these are all the base layers or underpainting of the portrait that we're going to build on top of this. I can also go back over the gray with the dark blue, the 508 Prussian blue, and because it's so hard, I can add more color and push the gray into the paper, just building up that blue color. And so here I am adding more dark blue on top of that gray. We finished the underpainting of Oscar, and now it's time to move on to step 2.